Okay, so have you ever had that feeling, like when you finish an assignment,
Uh-huh.
maybe it's an essay or like a presentation or something, and you're
Yeah.
like, looking it over and thinking, wow, this is it. This is the best thing I've ever
Oh,
done.
yeah.
And then you get some feedback and you're like,
L-
oh,
Right, yeah.
there's some room for improvement.
Yeah, there are a few edits that could be made.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that difference between how we see our own work and how like an expert sees it, that's what we're going to dig into today.
Yeah, that's a great topic.
It's all about self-assessment.
Mm.
Specifically, like how accurately students can score their own work,
Yeah.
compared to a teacher or another expert.
Interesting.
We're going to call it self-assessment scoring accuracy.
Okay.
So how accurate are we at judging our own learning?
Well, it's fascinating because it's not just a nice little extra skill to have.
Right.
Being able to accurately judge your own learning
Mhm.
is really fundamental. Because think about it, like all those decisions you make about what to study, what areas you need to focus on,
Mm.
it all really hinges on you having a good sense of where you're at right now.
Yeah, how much you actually understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
So getting a clearer picture of how accurate we actually are at this kind of self-evaluation, it's super important for anyone who is trying to learn effectively.
It is. And to understand this whole landscape of self-assessment accuracy,
Right.
we're not just talking about like one study or, just a few opinions here.
Oh.
We found a really, really comprehensive piece of research.
Oh, wow.
This is a meta-analytic systematic review.
Okay.
It was published in Educational Psychology Review.
Hmm.
And get this, this review brought together 160 different studies.
Wow.
They looked at data from almost 30,000 participants.
That's a huge sample size.
It's huge. So that scale gives us a really solid understanding of like what the average accuracy is and all the different factors that might be playing a role.
Yeah, but that's what's so cool about these meta-analyses, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're acting as this giant lens to help us see the common threads across just a massive amount of research.
Exactly.
So what we want to do in this deep dive is to basically extract the key insights for you
Okay.
about how well students can typically score their own work,
Okay.
and what are the main things that influence that accuracy.
All right, so let's jump right in.
Okay.
On average, how good are students at scoring their own work?
Well,
What did this review find out?
what they found is that generally speaking, students tend to overestimate their performance.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of see their work as a bit better than an expert would.
So they're a little more impressed with themselves.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
And the researchers, they actually crunched all the numbers from all those studies
Yeah.
and found an overall effect size, which they call GRE, of 0.206.
Okay.
And they also look at the correlation. They call it a Z of 0.472 between the scores students gave themselves and the scores that the experts gave.
Okay, so I'm already getting a little lost in the stats here.
I know it can get a little jargony sometimes.
It can.
Yeah.
So can you just break it down for us? Like,
Sure.
what does that actually mean for someone who's listening?
Yeah, so think about it like this. There is a connection between how you think you did on something
Okay.
and how an expert assesses it.
Okay.
That correlation, the 0.472, that tells us that there's a link.
Uh-uh.
So it's a moderate positive relationship, meaning there is some alignment.
Mm-hmm.
However, that effect size, the 0.206, that indicates that there's a small but consistent tendency
Yeah.
for students to score themselves just a little bit higher on average.
Interesting.
So yeah, while your own judgment isn't totally off,
Right.
there's a definite trend to see your work
Yeah.
through slightly rose-tinted glasses.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, probably.
I know. I've definitely had times in school where I was like, oh, I aced that.
Right.
And then I get the grade back and I'm like, oh, maybe not.
Oh, that's not what I was expecting.
Not quite.
Yeah.
So it's good to just be aware of that tendency to overestimate a little.
It is.
But the review went beyond just like the average accuracy. Right?
That's right, yeah.
They looked at what factors could make self-assessment better or worse.
Absolutely. So they explored 9 different factors that could potentially influence how accurately students can judge their own work.
Okay, let's hear about those.
So first, let's start with something that's probably pretty intuitive: feedback.
Okay.
The review found pretty clearly that receiving feedback helps students become more accurate in their self-assessments,
Makes sense.
and it reduces that tendency to overestimate.
Yeah, when someone else, especially someone with more expertise, points out, hey, here's some areas where you can improve,
Yeah,
it gives you a much clearer benchmark.
it does.
and then you can calibrate your own judgment a little better.
Yeah, it's like getting a second opinion.
Yeah.
That can really sharpen your perspective.
Definitely.
So that feedback, it provides those external reference points that you can then kind of internalize
Right.
and use to better evaluate your own work in the future.
Makes sense.
So the second factor they looked at was simply experience with self-assessment.
Okay.
And here's some good news. The more chances you have to self-assess, the better you tend to get at it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
seems like practice really does help you get closer to an accurate evaluation of your own skills.
Yeah, so even if you know your first few tries at self-assessment, they feel a little off.
Yeah,
It's a skill that you can develop over time.
exactly. It's not like you're either born with it or you're not.
Right.
It's something you can actively get better at.
Okay, good to know.
And this also highlights the value of just incorporating self-assessment
Yeah.
as a regular part of learning.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about the grade at the end, right?
Yeah.
It's that the act of self-reflection itself contributes to your learning and how well you can judge your own progress.
That's a good point. Okay, what's the third factor?
So the third factor is content knowledge.
Okay.
And this one, again, probably feels pretty straightforward. The better you understand the actual subject matter,
Yeah.
the more accurately you can evaluate your own work in that area.
That makes sense. It's kind of like, if you've never cooked before in your life
Uh-huh.
and you're trying to judge a cooking competition.
Right.
You might have like a general sense of what looks good,
Yeah.
but someone who actually knows the techniques and the flavors and all that.
Yeah, they're going to have a much more informed opinion.
Exactly. So it's like
Wow.
the stronger your grasp of the material,
Yeah,
the better you are at actually seeing, if your work really hits the mark.
exactly.
Okay.
A solid understanding of the content gives you a much clearer internal standard that you can then compare your own efforts to.
Makes sense.
But now here's where things get really interesting and maybe a little bit counterintuitive.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I like where this is going.
So the review, they looked at whether the purpose of the assessment,
Okay.
specifically whether it was formative or summative,
Hmm.
had an impact on self-assessment accuracy.
Okay.
So your formative assessments, those are the ones designed to help you learn and improve while you're in the process of learning.
Right.
Often those are lower stakes.
Yeah.
And what they found was that self-assessment accuracy was actually lower when the assessment's purpose was formative.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah. It's a little counterintuitive, right?
I would think that in a situation where it's like lower pressure
Yeah.
and the focus is on learning,
Uh-huh.
people would be, more reflective and maybe more accurate in their self-assessment. Why would accuracy be lower in those situations?
Well, that's a really great question. And
Yeah.
to be honest, the review points out that this is a finding that really needs more investigation. But one possible explanation is that because formative assessments often carry less weight, students might not put as much mental effort into the self-assessment process. So they might kind of go through the motions without really deeply thinking about their work.
Right. Okay.
Another possibility is that the criteria for those formative tasks might be less clearly defined
Okay.
than they are for like high-stakes summative assessments.
Yeah.
So that could also make it harder to judge performance accurately.
So maybe it's not that they're not as good at it,
Yeah,
but that they're just not trying as hard.
it could be.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting finding, and it definitely makes us pause and rethink how we use self-assessment
Right.
in different learning contexts.
That is a real aha moment for me because
Yeah.
it really challenges, the assumption that self-assessment is always good in the same way,
Yeah,
regardless of the situation.
right.
So the stakes and the focus of the assessment really do seem to play a role.
They do.
So what about the age of the student? Did the review find any differences in accuracy between younger and older learners?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They found that younger students in primary and secondary education,
Uh-huh.
they tended to overestimate their performance less than older students.
See, that's interesting to me, too, because you might think that younger students with less developed, metacognitive skills
Yeah,
would actually struggle more with self-assessment
right.
and maybe overestimate more easily.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But it's the opposite.
But it seems like it's the other way around.
Oh.
And one possible explanation for that is that it could be related to the development of those metacognitive skills. So younger students might have a less developed sense of, their own abilities and limitations,
Okay.
making them less prone to strong biases in either direction,
Okay.
like overestimation or even underestimation.
Right.
As students go through their education, their self-perceptions, they become more defined. And maybe along with that comes a greater tendency to overestimate in some areas.
Interesting. Okay, so we've covered feedback,
Yeah.
self-assessment experience,
Uh-huh.
content knowledge, that surprising thing about formative versus summative assessment,
Right.
and the educational level of the learner.
Yeah.
I know there were 9 factors in total.
Right.
What about the rest of them?
So the other factors were things like the clarity of the assessment criteria that students got,
Okay.
whether or not there was a rubric used to guide the work and the self-assessment,
Uh-huh.
whether there were any incentives tied to the accuracy of the self-assessment, like grades or points,
Right.
and then the specific field of knowledge being assessed.
Okay.
What they found is that across all the studies, they looked at the influence of these factors on self-assessment. Accuracy was less consistent or less statistically significant.
Interesting.
So, for example, we might think that using a super detailed rubric
Yeah.
would always lead to more accurate self-assessment. But the evidence from this review was more mixed.
Okay.
It seems like how well a rubric works really depends on, how well it's designed,
Yeah.
how well students understand it, and how consistently it's applied.
Right.
In the same way, the impact of, incentivizing accurate self-assessment wasn't super clear in the data.
Okay.
And while there might be some differences in self-assessment accuracy between different subjects,
Right.
the review didn't find a strong, consistent pattern.
So even though things like clear criteria and rubrics are generally good practice,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
their impact on self-assessment accuracy specifically is less clear.
Yes, less clear than things like feedback and experience.
Right.
And it's also super important to remember that the researchers themselves pointed out some important limitations in all this research.
Okay. That were those.
So they found something called significant heterogeneity,
Okay.
which basically means there was a lot of variation in the findings across those 160 studies. And they also noticed that many of the studies they looked at didn't have a lot of detailed information about their methods.
Okay.
And that makes it harder to definitively say what the impact of some of these factors really is.
Yeah. So even with this huge amount of data, it sounds like there's still some open questions.
Yeah.
And areas where we need more research.
We do, yeah.
Okay. So for everyone listening out there who's trying to learn and improve, what are the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, first, be aware of that general tendency to overestimate your performance.
Okay.
This isn't about, beating yourself up.
Right.
It's just about understanding that this is a common thing that people do.
It's a human thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second, actively seek out feedback.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful tools for improving your self-assessment skills.
Okay.
Third, recognize that self-assessment is a skill that you can get better at with practice.
Yeah.
So don't get discouraged if those early attempts feel a little bit off.
Right.
And finally, remember that strong connection between understanding the material and being able to judge your own work.
Right.
Really having a solid grasp of the content is key on so many different levels.
Yeah, and that surprising finding about formative assessments,
Right.
that should make us all think carefully about how we approach those lower stakes activities.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that just going through the motions isn't really enough.
That's right.
You have to really be engaged with the self-assessment process.
You do.
Well, this has been a really fascinating look into the world of self-assessment scoring accuracy.
It has.
And considering, all the variability that we talked about in the research, it really does make you think about what are the best ways you can get reliable feedback on your learning.
Right.
And how different kinds of learning activities can actually change your ability to judge your own progress accurately.
Yeah.
Definitely some food for thought for everyone out there as you continue on your own learning journey.